Hey kids, it's Jurassic James, and on this Jurassic James Explains, we're looking at Cryolophosaurus. So the name actually means cold crest lizard. Cryo means cold, like cryogenesis, lopho, crest, and saurus, lizard, because they're found in Antarctica. So the idea today is that Antarctica, if you don't know, is the continent on the bottom of the planet. It's essentially on the South Pole. And the first thing to point out was during the early Jurassic, when it lived about 190 million years ago, Antarctica wasn't down there, that far down. It was still in the southern hemisphere, but it wasn't that far down. So think more along the lines of Australia or Chile is, that kind of up that way, not at the pole, but still was very cold. And again, the idea is it's called cold crest lizard because it has this really cold crest. Now, same rules apply, older to newer models, but I must tell you that this is actually my first Cryolophosaurus figure right here. It's a 2010 Safari, and actually it's one of my top two favorites actually. What I like the most about it, of course, is the tail is appropriately length. The animal itself actually was about 21 feet long. Note to point out, in 1991, they found the first skeleton of Cryolophosaurus, and the idea was, if you don't know, paleontology is really big to find a site and have to get there again. Because they first found it in 91, and it was named in 94, and then they went back in 2011 and found more of the same animal. So you're like, wait, what happened? Well, a lot of times in paleontology, for fossils far away, you have to raise money, you funds, get there, dig it out, work hard. It's not the best environment to dig because the ground is rock hard. It's rock also, but it's also frozen too. So the idea was that we only had this one real known animal. And that one was actually a subadult, which means it was old enough to have babies, but it was still not fully done growing. So at 21 feet long, roughly, it's pretty big. And at the time, it was one of the biggest animals, one of the biggest predatory dinosaurs in the world. In the early Jurassic, it still was not done growing. That being said, what makes me like it too, of course, is that this guy has all the right parts. It has the 3 forward-facing toes, a little dew claw on the back. The hands are like the palm to palm, like this. So again, dinosaurs don't do this; they do like that. So like this on the toy. That's really cool. It looks like a nub on one of the hands. Actually, only on. Well, yeah, they both have it. So like it's like a little bit of a nub right there, kind of on my finger. It wouldn't be uncommon. I mean, I don't recall. I think they only found 4 fingers from the paper, but that little nub there wouldn't be out of question because the earlier theropods, we know dinosaur ancestors or pre-ancestors would have had 5 digits and they would have lost them over time. So yeah, for a Tyrannosaur, like the 2 main fingers, or Raptor at the 3, it wouldn't be unquestionable to have that in the early Jurassic. Also, I like the fact that it's kind of narrow as an animal. It's not really bulky, and the skull's really good. If you don't know, whenever I draw dinosaurs, what I usually do is I look at the skeleton, and I will draw based on that. Now, one thing to point out, in the world of paleontology art, there are 2 camps. There are the dinosaurs who are drawn with the skin wrapped around the skull real tight. You can see the shape of the skull. Whereas in most animals, we're more meaty than our skeletons. So I don't do that where it's skull, wrapped tight skin, but I do use that as a marker where the head, how long the head is, how the neck should go, like bones. Anyway, really cool figure. I like everything about it. Actually, it's one of my favorite figures. But of course, that crest right there is what the animal is known for, that frozen crest. And again, we see in predatory dinosaurs called theropods that they often have earlier on a lot of big crests and horns and things, and many of them retain them, but they get smaller and more durable. Whereas the earlier ones like Dilophosaurus have the 2 crests. This guy's like here, they get more solid, or at least close to the skull in later times. Anyway, the oldest that I'm aware of Cryolophosaurus figure is this 2008. It's called Procon. It's a company called Procon. I guess my first complaint, of course, is the tail is too short, and it has the generic Jurassic Park style hands, basically the wrist like this. If you don't know why it's a thing, in the Raptors, they actually had guys in suits in Jurassic Park, and they were like this. So the model, they had animation that had people in suits, and they were like this. So that's why that kind of became a thing in pop culture, and we keep seeing it to this day in toys. The crest is a little bit different. This one, the crest does kind of start here, kind of go down, but like this one goes kind of right to the face. One thing to point out with many birds today, a lot of their crest structures, modern bird species, are maybe be as small on a bone, and there's extra like keratin and things on that too. So we don't really know how the crest fully looked, but there are these like ridges running along it, which is like a Ruffles potato chip. It's kind of cool. Overall, I mean, the feet look very much a product of engineering that they essentially made a foot wide enough so the toy won't fall over, which is, I appreciate that. But it's not a good look for a dinosaur foot. It's very like a flat human foot with 3 toes, well, the 4 foot with dew claw. But overall, it's a decent figure. I'm not going to like trash or anything, but I prefer the Safari one more. The next one is the Bat-Tan, which is, I went to Target and they have this brand of these dinosaurs. I've not seen them anywhere else other than Target. And I've mentioned this company before. I like this one a lot too, actually. The only thing is the crest, it's different. Like all the other guys, the skeleton, they have like a solid one, like this piece. This one seems to have like 2. And the idea is that it was, it's like it's separate like this, not like, So I don't really think that's pretty accurate. But the hands are phenomenal. They have the 3-finger hands. They are palm to palm. What I like too is the first, like what we consider a thumb. The first one, often these 2 fingers were closer together than this one. Not an opposable thumb though, but like you can see that with this model here. So you can actually see that the first claw on top is actually more accurate. The tail is pretty decent size. The feet, they gave them these kind of like, again, these big padded feet for engineering. But again, when you see dinosaur's foot, we know this from footprints actually, not from this species but other dinosaurs, but they have the 3 like the bird foot, and they have little pads there too, but they're not like huge pads on the predatory dinosaurs. That huge compared to other animals like elephants or something. But anyway, another one's really a neat one is the Papo, and again, this one is sitting upright, but this is 1, probably a packaging thing, and 2, an action pose. So don't think that this animal walks like a human or like Godzilla. The idea is that this is a action, it's going to be fighting. Like I would imagine the setup of like that one and this one like you're fighting. But again, it's like a middle of hands are great. They're palm to palm. They're, there's a dew claw. The tail curves around. It's not that big, but I like the gloss. Like this figure, as a figure, is very pretty. I like that a lot. The skull has an articulate jaw, and also the crest is great. Let's see. Yeah, it's a really cool figure. I'm going to use this one for my analogy later on with the other animals. The last thing to point out with Cryolophosaurus physically, the figures, are the Jurassic World ones. And of course, they are not science accurate or anything. But I will, yeah, that's the only thing. That one falls over a lot. So I have 2, and of course, I like repaints, right? So again, if I were a kid playing in my backyard, there'd be what's called sexual dimorphism, boy or girl. Now, if it's a green environment, which the Cryolophosaurus, when it lived, it wasn't Antarctica, it wasn't cold, it wasn't ice. It was cooler, but not ice. It would have been a green area. So like this will probably be the female, and that will be the male. Or jokingly, if they were in a desert region, this blends in more, so it's the female, and then that's the male. Because remember, males and birds usually, the males are more festive is the word for it, I guess. So this one I left a little tag in it, so it can't make any noise. But if you move the head around, it does all this. The jaw is just articulate and itself, which is, I think, really great. I like when you can control it more. This one, of course, does all the noises. Of course. What I like with the Jurassic World figures, they're trying to do it more accurately. So the hands aren't quite like this, and they're not like this, but they're kind of like they're twisting. They're trying to get there, right? The whole 3 tails in the front and the dew claw on the side. The tail, of course, is too small. The crest, you can see it better. Again, that ruffled potato chip look almost to it. This guy has this double like a Margosaurus like spine. That's not, from what I understand, in the skeleton. But it's one of those interpretation things probably. But overall, pretty decent figure. And like I said, the skull should be a little flatter. But you're seeing the same thing twice here. Now, with that being said, let's go about some more information. So, in Antarctica, we have early Jurassic. So there are no horned dinosaurs. There are no duckbills. Those are later on for the most part. The ones we know. So what we're seeing are early theropods like Cryolophosaurus, and this is a Plateosaurus from Europe. But I'm using it as an example of what's called a prosauropod historically, but early sauropod morph. And then we have relatives. This is the Morphodon, again, different spot of the world, different time, different region. So we're seeing animals like this in the ecology. And actually, when they found this guy, it had the bones of one like this in its mouth, and there were ribs in its throat. So the assumption was it was choking to death when it died, but it turns out that actually the ribs in the throat were either the animal's ribs or like a Cryolophosaurus ribs. So it may have just been feeding it and died or something. We don't know. That's the problem with finding only one skeleton, is that yes, we know the animal exists, but also like that may have just been a really dumb Cryolophosaurus now. But one thing to point out as well too is that the crest itself is that, so I pointed out in my Shringosaurus video, they have a population in one spot, and they have some with their horns and without horns. We only have one individual. So is it common for the whole species to have crest, or is it just the males or females have it? We don't know. So again, to keep digging, keep finding, right? But again, like I said, Antarctica, it's difficult to dig in because rocks are already hard and it's frozen rock. Anyway, so the other question about this guy too is, does it have feathers? I know there's in the museum right now, there's a movie called Dinosaur Antarctica, and this is a star player, and they show it with feathers. Now, what supports the idea of having feathers is that there's no evidence on the skeleton they found or the parts they found, but we do know that, for example, Velociraptor, their cousins, which are not closely related to this guy, but they're still, theropods, Velociraptor have feathers, and then a Ceratopsine, a horned dinosaur relative called Ceratosaurus, which I did a video for a year ago. They have feathers, right? So if we see feathers in the predators and the herbivores, and we all believe dinosaurs have common ancestry, so if we see it on both branches, then therefore he may have had it too. One thing to point out too, it's kind of like how you have like a distant cousin, and you maybe both have like black hair or whatever, blonde hair, eyes, whatever. Well, if those traits are there, it's probably because your ancestor had it too, or at least it was in their system. That's what we're arguing here as far as that. Plus insulation. So that example is really important because in general, when you see an animal, the bigger an animal gets, the less like feathers or fur it needs. An example of this, in Asia, we have the Asian elephant. This is a bull right here. And then we have also the red panda. So, I mean, again, this is like a cherry pick example, but Asian elephants are mammals. They have hair. It's just not as much as a panda because why? Their temperatures, and they don't have to worry about staying warm the same way this guy would. They don't lose heat as quickly. Less surface area. Another example in birds are ostriches. I remember, ostriches, this is a very lush ostrich. If you ever see one in real life, they often have more sparse feathers, or at least less than most birds actually, compared to their cousin, a kiwi, which I just wanted to show off my kiwi. I don't see any time that I'm going to be doing a video on kiwis or anything like that. Just wanted to point out this kiwi exists in my collection. And I have four other kiwis, making 5 total, because why? They make me happy. That being said, the last thing I want to point out with Cryolophosaurus is, who are you? What is it, right? It's a theropod dinosaur, definitely, but theropod is a broad group. And in fact, I'll put a link below my theropods. You'll see where it fits in the family tree. But to give you more of a visual understanding, we didn't know where it fit in, right? So it has often been argued that the Dilophosaurus, the aka Spitter from Jurassic Park, that this guy is northern, like Arizona, North Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere. They're very similar animals in some ways. So therefore, like, they're thinking, oh, here's the 2 top predators. There's more to it than that, though. But it's clearly considered more advanced than the late Triassic Coelophysis types, right? So this is one kind of branch. There's a group of dinosaurs within theropod called the Tetanurans, which they have tendons in their tails. So Movosnine, obviously, that would include the raptors and rexes. These are guys called Coelurosaurs. They're feathered, hollow bone, very active dinosaurs. All the ones that you think about when you think about feathered dinosaurs, that's Coelurosaurs. They're also Tetanurans, but when you think Tetanuran, usually the base of the family, you're thinking something like Allosaurus, for example. So I've seen it in my time of studying paleontology, that at one point they were like, it's like an early Allosaurus, and then another point they're like, it's related to Dilophosaurus, and then they're like, well, it's definitely not a Belosaur. What are Belosaurs? We have the Ceratosaurus from the late Jurassic North America. I think I've done 2 videos on that one. And Carnotaurus, most famous of the Belosaurs. So these guys are a different branch too. And the idea is that these guys don't have the tendons in their tails as like the Allosaurus and Tyrannosaurs or Raptors have. So it's considered to be a basal Tetanuran. And again, on the page I'm going to link, you're going to see all these predators, and they're kind of aligned, like different groupings. And it's at the Tetanuran area, if I remember correctly. But the idea is that it's closer to Allosaurus, but it's not quite that advanced. Because you say, wait a minute, if it's only 21 feet long, it's not a very big animal. But it's a big animal for today's standards, but it's not big for a predatory dinosaur. But again, in the early Jurassic, it was. It's at the time the second largest predatory dinosaur known in the world at that time. So it's pretty big, it's pretty intimidating. And again, it wasn't fully grown. So that being said, I look forward to seeing more of debating where it falls family tree, because it's really interesting. If you don't know, my area of interest is the relationship of all life on Earth and all that. So right now it's considered abyssal tetranuran. It's or Cryolophosaurus. Those are the two arguments, but it's a tetranuran, so it's on this side. So we'll find out more in the future. And like I said, if there's more research data, more figures, I will do a part 2 to this video. And that being said, I'll see you guys next week. Oh, right. YouTube says, I get an email every week. Like, subscribe, and also there's something around here. You should click on that and see some other video, right? Because YouTube keeps telling me to tell you that. Right.